So, gladdening and steadying the heart. Want to expand on the title that was in the newsletter. The title was "Small Things That Really Aren't." Tonight, I'll talk about large things that we often overlook and small things that really aren't. So I want to talk about gladdening and steadying the heart from a couple of directions. Hopefully not too confusing. You all know the Buddhist teaching on loving kindness, on metta. You've heard this many times. This is what should be done by one who is skilled in goodness and who knows the path of peace, wishing in gladness and in safety, may all beings be at ease. Let none despise any being in any state. Let none through anger or ill will wish harm upon another. Sounds good. How do we do this? How do we do this? Have you ever had something in your life where that seemed, I don't know whether to say difficult or impossible? Is it just me? Is it, where it's too hard, too daunting, too far away, maybe even too stupid. Where you thought, well, fine, but the Buddha didn't have to deal with, my uncle, my mother, my father, my brother, my sister, my neighbor, my HOA, my personal version. The Buddha didn't have to deal with any of that, or he would never have said anything so ridiculous. I have a cartoon at home. I didn't bring it. There's a picture of apparently a husband standing kind of across the room with talking to his wife over there, and he says, and he's got his hands on his hips, and he says, "Yeah, well, the Dalai Lama didn't have to deal with your whining." And it's sort of like that, it's like, yeah, but the Dalai Lama doesn't have to deal with my HOA, right? Or, the Buddha asks something from the HOA, the Homeowners Association, they would just go, oh, fine, go ahead, do that, plant those trees, that's fine. A little bit farther out, our local politicians or some national politicians, I haven't decided yet whether I can dare watch the debate tomorrow night. I really have not yet decided whether I'm going to watch the debate. Just how do we do that? This is what should be done by one who is skilled in goodness and who knows the path of peace, wishing in gladness and in safety, may all beings be at ease. Let none despise any being in any state. Let none through anger or ill will wish harm upon another. So is this stupid? Even does it even make sense to try to love people that we find so difficult? How do we do this? I'm going to pause for a moment and just invite you to contemplate, not complicate, contemplate. Just some maybe situation in your own experience, in your own life, where this teaching is challenging. And it could be in a small way, it could be in a big way, it could be in a way that, is just a little annoying, and it could be in a way that kind of flattens you. If you want to, if you want to, turn to someone near you and tell them about it. If you don't want to, don't turn to anybody. Scrunch down in your seat really fast so that you will be telling people you just don't want to talk about it. Okay, so if you want to, just take a moment and tell somebody about whatever that difficulty is. One thing that we can sometimes notice is in the meditation, I was speaking to perception and story, that when we find something difficult, it's very easy. In the last couple of talks that we've had, the teachers have spoken of just how easy it is to go from the difficult into perception. It's like this. And then a story about it. And indeed, you could kind of feel the pull even as you're, maybe talking to your neighbor. It's like, well, let me tell you this, let me tell you the story here, and that we get pulled into the stories and rehearsing the stories. And then from that place, we go, oh, wait, no, I should be skilled in goodness and wishing and gladness and in safety and right. But we're doing it from that place, from the place where we've already gotten so deeply embedded into perception and story that it's really even harder than it might otherwise be. So the challenge of our practice invites us to gladden and steady the heart so that we can see that pull. There's nothing evil about it. But then we can bring skillful conditions to bear that help, that actually help. Help us wish in gladness and in safety, may all beings be at ease. We tend to kind of often work backwards with it by imagining that we're supposed to somehow act in some particular way without nourishing ourselves. So I want to talk about, how to do that from a couple of different directions. One is from a kind of a larger perspective about a larger perspective that we might overlook that can be helpful. And another, which gets at the actual title that I published about the talk, which is small things that really aren't. Okay. So in the larger perspective, we really need to work with ignorance a bit. The Buddha spoke about the three poisons, and again, the last couple talks spoke to those: greed, hatred, and ignorance, delusions, ignorance. And we often kind of get focused on greed and hatred, but we don't really think about ignorance too much. We're kind of ignorant about ignorance. Huh? Things that we don't know, things that we don't understand. And so the Buddha invites us to abandon ignorance in the sense of opening to, this is where the teachers who teach on non-dual and emptiness can be really helpful, to open to a much larger perspective. And I brought you a story. So I'll read you a story. This is a story that Rachel Naomi Raymond tells us in her book, My Grandfather's Blessing. If you haven't read her book, they're just really wonderful. And she's telling about a time, she was a very devout Jewish practitioner, and she tells about a time when she was traveling and was invited to the temple and to hear a very esteemed rabbi teach on the occasion of Yom Kippur, which is the annual, I'll read it to her. I'll read what she said. He was invited to speak about forgiveness at a Yom Kippur service. Yom Kippur is the Day of Atonement, when Jews everywhere reflect on the year just past, repent their shortcomings and unkindness, and hope for the forgiveness of God. Okay. But the rabbi did not begin to speak about God's forgiveness. Instead, so he's standing up at the podium and he walks out into the congregation and he takes from his wife his 1-year-old baby daughter, takes her into his arms, and then he walks back up to the podium with this little baby girl in his arms. And then he starts to teach about Yom Kippur, his formal Yom Kippur sermon. The baby girl, feeling his attention shift away from her, reached forward and grabbed his nose. Gently, he freed himself and continued the sermon. After a few minutes, she took his tie and put it in her mouth. The entire congregation chuckled. The rabbi rescued his tie and smiled at his child. She put her tiny arms around his neck. Looking at us, then she reached forward and grabbed his nose. I forgot that part. She put her tiny arms around his neck. Looking at us over the top of her head, he said, "Think about it. Is there anything that she can do that you would not forgive her for?" You know. And then he went on to say, and everybody was like, well, of course not. It's cute, it's funny, it's difficult, it's interfering with the sermon. But is there anything that this little one could do that you would not forgive her for? And he went on to say, and when does it stop? When does it stop? And so the invitation, I think, of the Buddhist teaching is to step back into that larger perspective, understanding the profound causes and conditions of my suffering, your suffering, everyone's difficulties. And invite a larger awareness. Is there anything from God's perspective? We don't talk about God so much as Buddhism, but is there anything from God's perspective that we would not be forgiven for? Understanding that the confusions, the mistakes, the errors that we and other beings make are made in ignorance. And in our ignorance, we don't see their ignorance. We think it's about a thing, an event, a person, a moment in time. Greed, hatred, and ignorance are the poisons. And so he invites us to investigate our ignorance and to step back a little bit more broadly. I want to talk about small things also, but I want to pause there for a moment. Anyone want to add anything or question or make a comment? Yeah, Liz, here, hold on.
One thing I was really, sorry.
There you go. This is for especially for the people online.
One thing that I've learned, and that's been very valuable to me, is that you can forgive and see that almost every act of suffering is done through fear, pain, and confusion.
Mm-hmm.
so you can forgive because we know that that happens, even if it's something very traumatic. But that doesn't necessarily mean you have to love that person or like them or forget what they've done.
Or let it happen, let it continue.
Yeah, or let
even
it continue.
Assuming we have some
Right.
control over that.
Yeah,
Let it
you
continue.
can have some, you can bring forgiveness without, wrapping your arms around them and, forgiving them that way. But
Good.
inside you can forgive,
Mhm.
knowing that it was almost always pure
Right.
pure pain and confusion.
Thank you. There's a difference between discernment, and I think that's maybe, Liz, what you're referring to. There's a difference between discernment and allowing or ignoring what is unskillful. Yeah, John.
Well, I was going to share that I usually have more success if when working or thinking about someone who's challenging about trying to have a don't know mind. Like, I don't know what's going on, as opposed, and I have more success, I think, with that than, say, trying to share loving kindness.
Thank you.
But I have to say that sometimes that don't know mind, I can feel a tinge of condescension in my stance. Right, which is like this little person snickering, like, good thing I'm not you, kind of thing. And so I clearly that means I need more work there, but
yeah. And I think
Thank you. I've heard it said that living with or living through resentment is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to get sick. When I look at it that way, forgiving, oh my God, my stomach is making noise. Sorry. I hope that didn't.
Your stomach agrees.
Yes, or disagrees, one of the two. Viewed that way, forgiveness feels like a pretty selfish act, right? Like an act of support for yourself as opposed to for the other person, right? Even though it be, presumably would benefit them, which may not necessarily be a bad thing. Good,
thank you. I know there are some other comments, but I want to go on because I want to touch on the other dimension as well. So my apologies, and hopefully there'll be some time at the end because I want to, so that's from the larger perspective. Don't need two microphones, Sharon. That's from the larger perspective, the perspective of just sort of stepping back and seeing from a larger picture. The original title of my talk tonight was Small Things That Really Aren't. Kabir, the mystic poet, Kabir says, something along the lines of, if you're really paying attention, even the leaves on the trees speak like pages of scriptures. The small things that really speak to us. And so by paying attention and receiving goodness that enables us to steady our minds and hearts is also part of that practice of then being able to be with the difficult. So it isn't like somehow, we're just sort of noble and expansive and, white knuckling it, but we're also just have a practice of filling this being with goodness and wholesomeness in a way that is nourishing. And I'm going to read you a poem, and then I want to tell you a story. So the poem is At the Corner Store. I've probably read it before. I have read it before here. So we want to be attentive to paying attention to small and often unexpected gifts and blessings that can nourish us as we go along our way. So at the corner store, he was a new old man behind the counter, skinny and eager. He greeted me like a long-lost daughter, as if we both came from the same world, someplace warmer and more gracious than this cold city. I was thirsty and alone, sick at heart, grief-soiled. And his face lit up as if I were his prodigal daughter returning, coming back to the freezer bins in front of the register, which were still and always filled with the same old cable car ice cream sandwiches and cheap frozen greens. Back to the knobs of beef and packages of hot dogs. These familiar shelves strung with potato chips and corn chips, stacked up beer boxes in immortal Jim Beam. I lumbered to the case and bought my precious bottled water, and he returned my change, beaming, as if I were the bright new buds on the just bursting open cherry trees, as if I were everything beautiful struggling to grow. And he was blessing me as he handed me my dime over the counter and the plastic tub of red licorice whips. This old man who didn't speak English beamed out love to me in the iron week after my mother's death. So that when I emerged from his store, my whole cockeyed life, what a beautiful failure, glowed gold like sunset after rain. Frustrated city dogs were yelping in their yards, mad with passion behind their chain link fences. And in the driveway of a peeling paint house, a woman and a girl danced to contagious reggae. Praise Allah, Jah, the Buddha, Kuan Yin, Jesus, Mary, and even jealous old Jehovah for eyes, hands of the divine everywhere. I want to tell you a story of the divine. This is in a plastic bag. I almost didn't bring it because it's so precious to me. It's about 30 years old. And it is a newspaper. This particular newspaper, as you perhaps can see, is written entirely in Chinese. I have absolutely no idea what the newspaper says. Here's how I got this newspaper. Oh, and a little plug, some of you know my website. There's a new page on the website that is called Podcasts, where I am speaking some of the teachings. There's a teaching about small things that really aren't, and it's the story of this newspaper. So about 40 years ago, 30 or 40 years ago, my husband was starting a new business and was making trips to China. And I accompanied him on one of the trips, and I was miserable. China had just very recently really opened to white Westerners. It was in the middle of winter. It was dark. There was smog. You couldn't see, literally could not see across the street. The smog was so bad. It was freezing cold. And my husband was stressed and busy and preoccupied, and I was cranky. And so after he finished his days of business, we drove around the countryside a bit into some of the rural villages, and we often stopped at the Buddhist temples that were just then reopening to anybody, much less Western tourists. So I was walking around in this temple, really appreciating it, finally thinking, okay, fine, this is better. I like this better than smog. And a man like across the way saw me and was really apparently really surprised to see this Western woman, because there just weren't Western women in China in those days. And so he came over to me and he, in vain, attempted conversation. So he's standing next to me and he's chattering away and I'm like, hi, welcome. And he's chattering away and he's just obviously quite happy to see this Westerner in his community. He wasn't a monk, he was obviously visiting from the community. And he pulled from his back pocket the day's newspaper and he gave it to me. It was such an amazing and precious gift. He wanted to give me something. And it made no conceptual sense whatsoever. To this day, I have absolutely no idea what the words say, but this is so precious to me that I almost didn't bring it tonight. It was like, well, what if I lose it? And it has lived on my altar ever since. And it makes me wonder how many gifts each day in the corner store, wandering around a foreign temple, how many gifts each day do we neglect to receive because they're too little? Or because they don't come wrapped in some kind of package that says, this is a big gift and I bought it for you and it's really expensive and I hope you like it. But that it's the gift of someone's presence. We were in the hospital yesterday for a medical visit, and the receptionist was just like him. She was just open-hearted, knowing that it was difficult for us to be there. And how many gifts each day do we have that we don't really notice? So I'm going to invite you again to contemplate. Today, or yesterday, or 5 minutes ago, or a week ago. What is a small gift that you received that really wasn't? Does anyone want to share anything? Or, yeah?
I was walking to the grocery store early in the morning on High Street, and a lot of people that I meet are homeless, and I have boxes in my mind about who the people are that I'm meeting.
Hold the microphone up. There you go.
And I met a woman of color, and I smiled at her, and she immediately did a namaste bow to me. And it was so unexpected in that setting.
As your perception had her.
Because my box had, she was in a box until she did that bow. And it was like the newspaper for you. It was just phenomenal.
Beautiful. Anybody else? Anybody else have small things that really aren't? Anybody online?
Yeah,
Cynthia?
oh.
Oh, Barbara.
I was in India and I was walking around on the streets and I came to a flower. It's just all these stalls with all these beautiful flowers. And I was looking at them and I didn't think I could buy anything because I was, in a motel room, but I was just looking at them and the person that owned the stall just gave me a flower. And it just blew me away because, here I am, I'm an American and, I'm like practically a millionaire compared to, these people selling flowers in these stalls in India. And yet it just was given so graciously without hesitation, just because I was looking and thinking, oh, these are so beautiful.
Thank you, Barbara. And I think, Cynthia, you unmuted. Did you want to say something?
Yes, yesterday I had a lot of trouble finding a medical facility. I'm in Roanoke and just could not find it. And I was going to be late for my diagnostic test, which has been worrying me. And I called the office before I left, and the woman talked me through how to get there. And then I couldn't find it. So in the midst of the journey, I called again. And both times, this woman was just so calm in the midst of my anxiety and panic and so kind-hearted. And she said, go to the address because there's a street just missing for some reason from navigation. So this happens all day long. People get lost and can't find this facility. And she said, go to the address that Maps takes you and I will take you from there street by street. And it ended up, I didn't need her to do that. But the difference she made in, I'm not even sure I ever would have arrived, but that she had the patience and kind-heartedness to be so calm, cool, and collected and kind-hearted when she does this dozens and dozens of times a week was really, it made my week.
Beautiful. I'm sure that we could stay the rest of the night telling stories about either being able to kind of step into a larger frame or to be able to receive small things that really aren't in ways that either or both of them allow us to steady and gladden our hearts and minds. And so the invitation of our practice is indeed to know how things are. And then, as Ajahn Suchita says, to bring skillful conditions to bear. And they will vary every moment. Those skillful conditions will vary every moment and for each of us. And we help each other to remember. We just help each other. And it isn't like, oh, that person is so wise and I'm not like that. It isn't like that. We all get stuck. We all get confused. We all get lost. We all wander around and we help each other remember how to gladden and steady our hearts when life is difficult, which it is for everybody. Each one of us, every single one of us, has had a difficult day. And so we help each other. And the Buddha says at the same time, what we do is we help each other to to steady ourselves. That's really what the help is. There's a sutta where there's an acrobat and the teacher tells her, you know, let's take care of each other. And she says, that's wrong. She says, we have to take care of ourselves first. We have to take care of our own balance. And that way we take care of each other. And the Buddha tells the story as a way of saying, yes, that's correct. That we don't act first and then reorganize, but we gladden and steady our hearts, and we help each other to do that. So may we each every day take in wisdom, spaciousness, moments of blessing, moments of gladness, and may we help each other, not because we're so wonderful and we're going to do it for you, but we just help each other remember when we get lost. You know, this poem by David White, he says, enough. Enough. These few words are enough. If not these words, this breath. If not this breath, this sitting here. This opening to the life we have refused. Again and again. Until now. Until now. So as we close our practice tonight, may we wish this gladness of heart and steadiness of heart for ourselves, and in whatever way feels manageable and real. For all beings everywhere. May all beings everywhere be at ease, including ourselves. So go in peace. I was just feel so inspired. I never planned to say this, but I was at the end of my talk, so I just want to say, I love you guys. I love you. I love you. Bye.